even at a tiny, tiny age, just seem like they just don't want to sleep. They're just busy looking around and interacting and engaging with the world, and they just never seem tired.
Welcome to Transforming the Toddler Years, a Core 4 parenting podcast for conscious, cycle-breaking parents ready to turn toddler tantrums into teachable moments. Hi, I'm Cara Tyrrell, a lifetime lover of littles, mom to 2 grown and flown girls, and an early childhood educator. Through the show, I teach you my collaborative parenting methodology for nurturing your little human's mind, body, and spirit. Because how you connect and collaborate in the first 5 years is how you raise happy, healthy kids who grow into the best version of themselves and find true success in school and life. Does your child struggle with sleep? If not, I'm so happy for you. And if you are one of the majority whose child does struggle, this episode is for you. My guest is Macall Gordon, and she is a wizard with helping Livewire kids sleep. She'll tell you more about what that means. She has a master's degree in applied psychology, and she really specializes in research-based infant mental health, sleep advice, and parenting culture. Macall's so personable, and the way that she is going to show you to support your children based on their personalities and their tendencies and how that aligns with their sleep patterns so we can successfully get them and us enough sleep is a really special episode. Macall, you are here to talk about sleep. It's one of our hot button topics we can't get enough of. So excited to have you on the show.
Oh, thank you. I love talking about it, obviously.
Yes. So I read through all your stuff and I was just like, little live wires. What a great way to talk about sleep and children. And I know that one of the founding principles for you is this idea that personality and temperament really affect our personal sleep patterns. When did you first key in and say, I wonder if I should learn more about this?
Wow, that's such a good question. Honestly, I don't know that I've ever pegged the moment about sleep. I think it was, I studied temperament and also at the same time was studying kind of this whole weirdness we have around sleep training. So my graduate program really was all about what do we really know from the research on everything they tell parents about sleep training. What do we really know? And where are the disconnects? So I was studying that kind of by itself in a way. And then I had also, I was in this kind of sleep world and then got trained as a sleep coach. Then I was like, well, maybe I should use this knowledge to actually get it out in the world. And I think the gradual approach that I got trained in by Kim West, who's my co-author, and then all this work on sleep research and temperament, it just kind of came together. And then I had the opportunity to really sort of test it out. So you often know like, well, this was my experience. I know what my experience was. And then you start hearing the same thing from parents. And I have to tell you, I'm still hearing the same stuff now that I was hearing back or that I was experiencing back. It would have been the mid-90s. So on some level, through all that time, all the technology, all the knowledge, not a lot has really changed.
Wow. What were you hearing? What are you hearing?
Yeah. So a lot of the stuff that people say around, and again, this is so generalizing, but a lot of the rhetoric around sleep training is you've got to do it. You've got to start early because if you don't start early, it's going to be bad. It won't be that hard to do. It'll be quick and it's totally effective. And then the other one is sort of like it's going to be harder on you than it is on the child. Now, that is all true, or some of it's true for lots of people. Let me just say that. Like lots of people take a book and they do the thing and in 3 days it's over and they never have to touch it again. Awesome. Good for them. I never talk to those people because they don't need me. The people I talk to have tried that method and then another method, and then they've circled back to the first one and they've tried it harder, and it's just not working. And that's the case for many, many, many people. In fact, when you look at the research across all the studies, you look at the results of each individual study, the cry it out approach didn't work in the study for between 25 and 50% of the people in the study. So there's a little miscommunication to parents, and that when stuff doesn't work for them, they're basically told, well, that's because you did it wrong, right? The blame goes right back on the parent. It doesn't go on to the intervention. Nobody tells parents, well, hey, maybe this approach just isn't right for your kid. Let's try this other thing. For a long time, there has been no other thing, right? And that's where I totally was, 1994, 5, whatever it was. It was cried out or nothing. And I was like, well, I can't do that. I can't do it. And I know my daughter would cry for 3 or 4 straight hours and never give up ever. So I was just stuck. Stuck, and I just had to gut it out. Now, thank goodness for Kim West, because she, at the same moment, pretty much was on the other side of the country with the same problem, but she was like, there's got to be a different way. And so she really experimented with finding this new way. And so that's kind of how we both came to this topic, the same idea from different points, not different ways into the problem.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Quick question. Do you subscribe to the Core 4 Connector? That is our weekly newsletter. Drops into your inbox every Monday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Just a great way to start the week. Reconnect with the parent, the educator, the nanny, the adult you want to be in your toddler's life. It's easy, quick, and free to sign up. Just use the link in the show notes and you will get all the links that are from the last week's podcasts, just in case they got by you. And you say, oh, that's the one I wanted to listen to. Right. Easy, efficient. That's my goal, is to always provide value for you while keeping your life as simple as possible. Sign up for the Core 4 Connector today, and let's get this episode started. I was about a decade behind you. My kids were born in 2003 and 2005. Wow. And same, I walked into parenting knowing I was not going to do cry it out. Yeah. But I also had my early childhood education background behind me. And I'm one of those intuitives who truly understood that who my child is was going to be my guide. So luckily I had some of those resources, and I opted for creating my own thing called sleep soothing. And I was like, okay, I know that my body needs to calm down in order to come into a soothing state of being in order to achieve a sleep state. So our kids must too, at any age, especially that early formative age. So I am thrilled that you're here to give us a little more education on how that all works.
Yeah, I love that. If we look kind of, I think the reason there needs to be an alternative is because the behaviorist premise of sleep training is incongruent with everything else we do with kids. It stands alone. I believe it's the only arena in child rearing where we still take this behavior modification paradigm, right? Mm-hmm. Like the old Watson, what you reinforce persists. And if you take away the reinforcement, it'll go away. We don't do that in any other aspect of parenting. And I think parents feel that, and they know it. They know that somehow this just doesn't jive. So the approach that I use from Kim is, I like to call it scaffolding, where you're like, no, we're going to change the pattern. because there's kind of no way to do it but to do it, right? You got to change things, but we're going to give them a lot of help at first. And then we're going to back that help off. And so I say it's like how we're, especially for people with little babies, little ones, I say how you're going to teach them to ride a bike. First, you're going to give them training wheels. Then it's going to be time to take the training wheels off. But you're not just going to go, hey, kid, here's a two-wheeler. I'll be over there. If I help you, you'll never learn. No, we hold on to the bike for dear life while they get the hang of balance and pedaling and braking. But we're also not going to hold on forever. We're going to start letting go so they really feel what it's like to actually balance. And that makes sense to people. That makes a lot of sense to people. And it's a nice middle ground between cry it out and not doing anything.
Yeah. One of the things that I feel so strongly about, Macall, is that we underestimate our kids. And it's not because we want to, it's for a lack of parent education in knowing what these kids are capable of at such a young age. And that is one of the things that I believe kids can do.
Mm-hmm. Well, it depends on what age we're talking about. I do know that some people, some experts really are advocating for quite early sleep training, and there's just no evidence that that's necessary or even really that effective because of all the development that's going on, right? So you could get it going for a month, but then there's that big 4-month regression, or you could get it going and then a big change happens. So it depends on the age and also what you kind of are trying to accomplish. Like I tell people, experiment in the first 6 months. That's cool. Just don't expect a lot. Don't expect it to stick. Definitely don't expect it to stick. Like it might work for a couple of days. And then if it stops working, that's okay. It's okay. Keep going or just try again later. Right. But we put so much pressure on parents to accomplish something so early. When I tell people they don't have to sleep train until 6 months, I literally see anxiety and guilt and worry like just evaporating off of their bodies because they know it's too early, I think.
Yeah. And one of the things that we see with parents more than ever now is this idea of, well, like you're talking about having this expectation, right? And parents come in, if we're using the bike metaphor, parents come in to parenting and are told, here's the bike, get on and go. There's not a whole lot of scaffolding or support in the, how do you do the things you're trying to do? So that permission to say, just enjoy your baby. Just hang with them for a little while. This is a skill that they can learn. And as long as you do it with compassion and love and some consistency down the road, it will happen.
And there's time. I mean, I cannot, well, I have so many stories, but I have so many people with, I'm not kidding, 6-week-old baby saying, I know, I've probably done all these bad habits. I'm feeding her to sleep. Your baby's 6 weeks old. They're barely they're barely on the planet. You have not, parents really think they've already screwed it up by doing the things that we're actually supposed to be doing for babies at that age. And I just think it's a huge disservice to parents to make them think that they could make one choice and ruin their kid forever, right? Like there's this sort of black and white kind of, you'd better do this, or else it's going to be horrible. And parents are just like, they're like twitching. They're so like freaked out about stuff. And when you tell them like, look, you cannot make a mistake. If you make a wrong turn, you can make a different turn. There, I like to say the parenting road is long. Pace yourself.
Yes.
Because it doesn't end with sleep.
No, definitely not. Just that big beginning, but definitely not. So I really do want to dive into this idea of personality and temperament and how it affects our sleep patterns. But before we do, I have kind of a hot button question for you. Okay. Those parents who have kids who are 6 weeks,
Yeah.
8 weeks, quickly approaching 12 weeks. And mom's got to go back to work.
Yeah.
And she's feeling the stress around, how do I create a sleep pattern that works for not just my baby, but for me so that I can function? Do you have words of soothing and comfort for them as well?
It depends. I mean, there's just, biological realities of a tiny baby, and we really don't have a lot to work with at those ages. So we say part of the problem with having to go back to work is the idea that really you need more people around you to help, right? So this is where I say we've got to get dads or partners involved. And then moms will say, but I'm up to pump or whatever. And it's like, yeah, work with lactation. And we got to be able to split up the night so that each person gets 5 hours. If you can get 5 hours, you can limp along. You'll be okay for a while. Once the baby's a little bit older, yeah, we might have to push the baby a little harder. But again, sleep training is about leaning on a child's infrastructure to be able to direct their own attention, to be able to learn from patterns. And those skills take a while to fully come on. There are people that say you can start this really drastic sleep training, but I have to say there's just no research on that. We really don't know anything about it. So I really say, look, be gentle, be slow, get support, do what works, because there's no guarantee that if you actually try to sleep train at those early ages that it's going to stick. That's the other problem is like, sure, people can do it, but it doesn't really stick. And then you've just done all this work for nothing. So split up the night. Mom goes to bed at 8 o'clock if she has to, puts in earplugs, and dedicates herself to sleep for 5 hours. They switch, then dad goes to bed or the partner goes to bed, whatever. I think that's how you kind of get through in a better way. Or you have, again, grandparents come over. Somebody is on night duty with the baby. We need more than just a mom,
Yeah.
We're all trying to do this by ourselves, and it's just not how it should be, honestly.
Right. Absolutely. I've recently started sleeping with a sleep mask because it darkens the room so entirely. And I read the research around what that does to allow your brain and body to fully shut down. And it's been a game changer.
Wow. Amazing. Yeah. I always say you can tell the difference. You can see people's probably temperament, but definitely processing systems. I go, just look around on a red-eye flight. There are those people who sit back like this and they're out, right? They're snoring to beat the band. They just have their arms crossed and they're out. And then there's definitely me. Eye mask, earphones, blanket, special pillow, probably some Benadryl, I don't know what. And I still cannot sleep on a plane. Can't. No, I don't think I ever have.
Wow.
That's the difference. That's what we're talking about when we talk about babies and temperament too, right?
Yeah.
There are some kids that parents can lay the baby down from 3 weeks old and that child falls asleep naturally by themselves. Then there are others who are like Princess and the Pea, and it just doesn't ever happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, one of the beautiful things about babies is that although we're sifting through all that information in the very beginning, over time, we start to see the patterns and those patterns in behavior, in temperament, in personality. So talk to me about these Livewire kids.
Livewires, yeah.
Who are they and how do we know if we have one?
Oh, yeah. So it's interesting because, again, like I said earlier, that there were experiences I had, but I've now started hearing, like, honestly, it's almost like a checklist now where I can hear someone just has to say one word and I go, okay, I know what we've got. I know what's happening here. So you often, again, this isn't going to apply to every type of alert Livewire. Parents will say, oh my God, so alert. Eyes were wide open, like right at birth, holding their head up, crazy early on milestones. The banner word, though, has been FOMO, right? Do you know that? You know that term. Yeah. Fear of missing out. Oh, such a bad case of FOMO. And I immediately go, okay, Livewire. That's what we're talking about. So these kids just, even at a tiny, tiny age, just seem like they just don't want to sleep. They're just busy looking around and interacting and engaging with the world. And they just never seem tired. Yeah, crazy. Also can be really intense. So people will say, my child doesn't just fuss. It's like their arm is being ripped off. Like everything is a huge deal, right? Like they act like they're dying or it happens super fast. So that's intensity and reactivity are the fancy terms. So the size of the reaction and the speed of it. So people will say, if I don't get to her fast, she goes 0 to 100. Like there is no fussing stage, which is sometimes why the whole Ferber thing doesn't work for them, because there's no in between. I'm kind of working on it. It's like it goes straight to hysterics. And parents absolutely know this. The interesting thing about some of this is parents don't always connect the dots. About that this is just who their kid is. Sometimes they do. They'll say, my baby's just not like the other babies. I used to do parent talks for a parenting organization in Seattle, and I go to a meeting where it'd be like babies 2 to 4 months roughly. And there'd be a circle of moms and all the babies like lying on little blankets in the middle, and the moms were eating snacks and chatting. There was always one mom in the back of the room like this, with the fussy baby looking, I always thought kind of embarrassed and sad because she wanted a moment to sit on a blanket and eat some crackers like a human being rather than in the back with her fussy baby. And that's the other problem, is that the parents of these babies or these babies don't seem to group together. There's always one in a cluster of more easygoing babies and then one in a cluster. And all of these people think they're the only ones. And they don't know that it's a huge group of people. Huge.
Oh,
I know.
So with that said, it sounds kind of dire, right? That you've got this child who is kind of running the ship. And I can imagine parents would be very concerned, kind of walk on eggshells about making decisions because there might be big explosive behaviors or out. How did they approach sleep when it's already such an anxiety-inducing time of day?
I'll tell you, that is probably one of the best questions I've ever had. That's such a good question because it absolutely is true. In fact, when I train or talk to groups of providers, so people who are going to work with the parents, I say, look, you cannot make judgments about these people. You have to understand where they are. They are exhausted, more exhausted than any other parents, not just because sleep is bad, but because these kids require more from parents every moment of the day. More interaction, more talking, more carrying, more holding, more sort of playing with them, like more. So they are depleted for sure. They also feel or worry that this, whatever they're experiencing, is their fault. So they are thinking, I think I'm bad at this. In fact, I did some research. I did a big parent survey on temperament. And I went to just parents in general. So I compared people with mellower kids to parents of these Livewires. And I found that the parents of Livewires, more intense kids, not only rated themselves as more physically and emotionally exhausted, understandable, but they rated their own parenting competence significantly lower than parents of mellower kids. So not only were they working harder, they thought they were doing a cruddier job, which absolutely broke my heart. But see, with these kids, you don't often get the feedback, right? You don't get the feedback that whatever you just did worked. And so you're just never sure. You're just never sure. And for me, 30 years on, I still feel that way. I'm still like, I have no idea what I did. I don't know what worked. I have no idea. Something must have worked, but I don't know what it was.
Wow.
Yeah. And so when you get a parent who's that tired, who's probably tried a million things, which I also found that they had tried more strategies and with less success. So they have tried the things. And they're probably kind of shell shocked. There's a term sometimes in the coaching world, they call it being tear sensitive. And that just means parents who sort of don't want their kid to cry. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, I don't love that term, but these parents, it's not just a matter of like, oh, I don't want my poor baby to cry. It's like over time, all the crying and the upset, I think really wears parents down, and they then will do anything to make it stop for a moment. So we really have to understand this mindset, and you have to be super compassionate. And often what I end up doing when I do coaching is, and I do it in the book, I think a lot, is like, look, we got to patch this parent back up because they are like the walking dead right now. And we have to get them feeling better about where they're at and where they maybe could go before we even start the sleep process.
They are the foundation. They hold the space. They are the relationship. You know, I want to fast this forward a second, but I would be remiss if I don't say that as a parent of a colicky baby, like an actual textbook for real, and then she turned 4 months old and was the happiest human on the planet since, I feel like sleep struggles can often get diagnosed as colic. So if you are in that space because you're just hearing all the crying, and you're like, oh, I have a tiny human. They cry a lot. I must have a colicky baby. Make sure that you go to your doctor, do your research, find out what's going on before you just feel like that's forever your future, because it is a huge challenge. All right. So I want to fast forward past that infancy, past the 6 months. Now you're 18 months in. Now you're 2 years in, and you're like fully depleted because you've been doing this for 48 months, and your child is still not sleeping through the night. Help us understand why it's so important to stop trying to solve the problem and start trying to really see your child for who they are.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's still, you're right, problems to be solved. I mean, if for example, a child is taking 2 hours to fall asleep and it's just a full on extravaganza of, difficulty, we do want to solve that. But I can tell you, I get babies and 3-year-olds in my practice and in talking to parents. I love talking about 3-year-olds. In the book, the piece on 3-year-olds is the longest part of the book because you have to stay ahead of them for sure, because their brain is popping. You also have more possible strategies. Like you have more you can actually do that will work. And so usually what happens with these, and I'll just say, I think part of this temperament is absolutely, I say a big brain. So smart kids, smart. And they're seeing what they can do with their brain, right? Especially at bedtime. So in those instances, mostly what we talk about is locking down the options of what can happen at bedtime, making sure you give them lots of heads up, practice, warning, repetition of what's in the routine and therefore what's not in the routine. And then making sure that everything really helps them settle down. Because again, that's a good skill for life, right? Learning how to slow that brain down, because these are the kids that can get stuck in rumination, in fears, in all kinds of stuff. And we really have to help them even at 3 years old, learn how to drive their own brain and start understanding what thoughts are and what worries are and things like that. So we do a lot of that at bedtime. I'm like, bedtime, it's like what they say about painting, right? Prep should be most of the time that you spend, not the actual painting, but getting prepped. It's the same way, I think, with 3-year-olds and sleep. It's
Yeah.
preparation.
I'm so with you. That toe-to-toe with a 3-year-old, I love it. We get in there. I have an idea. You have an idea. Then we create a plan and we'll lock down the plan. And then inside the plan, there's like very little flexibility, but there's a lot of success checkpoints. Just all beautiful stuff.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And we, that's where it's important to really understand your kid's temperament. So a lot of times I say, so you do a bath. Does a bath calm them down or wake them up? And about half the time people will go, oh my God, it's crazy town after the bath. And then we're like, maybe we don't do a bath at bedtime. You have to know what's setting you up for success, not making it worse. And there are always swap outs that you can do.
Yeah.
Instead of reading a book, let's do a recorded sleep visualization where they listen to it. The key though, no matter what you do, is to start pulling the parent out of the child's go to sleep process. And because so many parents are stuck in the room, they're stuck. Yeah. They're either laying with the kid or they have to be in the room during the extravaganza of going to sleep. And that's usually what parents are looking for. It's like, I can't just keep sitting there or sleeping in there full time. Right?
Absolutely.
Happens a lot.
All right. I am really respectful of my audience and the fact that they do have small kids, and I try to keep these episodes manageable, but I have this question I just can't not ask you.
Okay, please.
And I know that you have a lot of research-based evidence behind you. And so I'm curious about how you coach people the last interaction with technology their kids should have before we start a bedtime routine.
At least an hour, ideally more. Technology, yes, no technology.
It gets them firing so fast. And so I imagine the calm down must take longer.
Yes. And it's that whole blue light and melatonin. And I'm like, with these kids, you need every milligram of melatonin you can get. So no, I mean, again, with these parents, I did have one recent, person that I was working with, and they're like, look, we just give her like 20 seconds of this, video about brushing teeth, so she'll brush her teeth. Okay. Sometimes here's the thing, as long as okay, the blue light, the melatonin, we know, but this is literally the only thing we can do right now. That, you gotta do you. But I definitely say, if you're going to give the kid a show to watch, I would do it way before bedtime. Like maybe after dinner, as you're cleaning up, you do a show, and then you do all the bedtime stuff. But definitely no TVs in the bedroom. Mm-hmm. We even say, watch out for being on your phone if you're sitting with the child. Even the phone being near them for some kids can be not great.
Oh, wow. So many amazing takeaways from your time with us today, Macall. Listen, she has a new book with her co-author, Kib, Why Won't You Sleep? And by the way, it's ! So you know that the stuff in there is really good. And it's an evidence-based resource specifically for parents of alert Livewire kids from 6 months to 5 years. Go get yourself a copy of this book. Tell us, Macall, where can they grab it?
Yeah, if you can go to the website, whywon'tyousleep.com, you can sign up and get an early digital copy if you want, or you can just pre-order on Amazon or Barnes & Noble under the title.
Fantastic. What an incredible resource for parents who are looking for that other strategy. Thank you again for all your time and your expertise.
Oh, so good. Thank you.
All right, moms, dads, caregivers, all of you out there doing the big job of raising kids, you know what to do. Stay mindful and proactive as we transform the toddler years.